my experience, can be helpful in some small way. So I'm sharing my screen. That should be, I guess I should. Can you see the chat window in my shared screen? No? Okay. All right. I'll put it down here anyway. Well, you know what? I'll do this and then I'll come up. Okay, but you can see the Google slide thing. Okay, great. And I think just in case people don't know, you can in Zoom, you can select a view. So you can see my shared screen in the middle. And then if you want to put the little icons at the top of the little Zoom bar, you can just select to see me or other people. And hopefully that works for everybody. If not, put in the chat and we can try to fix it. Okay, so I'm going to go very, very quickly. I will even time myself. It's 10:04 now. I'll just go very quickly through what we covered last week, and I have it marked down in my notes where we stopped. So, in fact, I'm not even going to look at my notes. I'll just cover the more broad topics that we talked about last time. And if everybody wouldn't mind muting yourself, the little ambient noises can make it a little harder to hear everything. If you can mute yourself, and then obviously during questions we'll unmute. Okay, so this is the workshop, Music Business for Uncompromising Artists. So we went through intros last time, which I'll click through. We talked about the old music paradigm versus the new music paradigm. And the old music paradigm is basically, it's this kind of little bit of a bottleneck for artists. So a major label contract is the prize of the old music paradigm, and fans own the music. Also, sales kind of drives everything. Sales of physical albums. Tours are done to sell records. Artists are signed and dropped often very quickly based on their ability to sell albums. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. The new paradigm deals more with streaming and sharing. And one thing that I didn't mention last time, which I think is interesting, is that nowadays, the way that we listen to music, the way that most people most of the time listen to music is via streaming, just statistically speaking. And you might listen to, the first experience that you'll probably have of an artist is listening to their music in that way, sometimes a lot. And then you might go see them live or support them in a crowdfunding campaign. In the old method, the listening to the music, the interaction of you hearing their music, that kind of came at the end. In the old days, you might hear about an artist a lot and be intrigued before you even heard them. Certainly before you went out and bought the album. Now it's kind of the opposite. So my advice in general, which we'll get into, is what I think the best path for artists to do is to make your music available as many places as possible for anyone to hear it, because that's the first step in them becoming a fan, joining your community, and experiencing what you are offering. And then once they're in, you can get to the financial reality of getting them to support your crowdfunding campaign or a Patreon campaign or Kickstarter, or downloading your music on Bandcamp or buying vinyl, things like that. I will talk about methods that don't involve that, which are certainly valid. In my opinion, get your music out there everywhere and then bring them in that way. Also, the whole gatekeeper thing has dissolved. Any of us with a fairly small budget could record and mix and release an album internationally all on our own at very low cost. So, when people start saying that streaming has destroyed the music industry, I hear a lot of those points, but the same reality has also created the ability for me to put an album out and have it, heard by somebody in Finland next week, and I only spent $750 to get that album out. That was not possible before. And just as before, and this is a microcosm of everything, live performance was there to support record sales. Now it's the opposite. Streaming and music delivery to fans is a way to get them to come and see you live. And a lot of artists are experimenting with very creative ways of live performance, including, which is happening now, online concerts and performances. Those can be revenue generators if you want them to, or not. But live performance kind of is a destination. as opposed to a means to an end in a lot of ways. And this is just a note that I have, that complaining is not a strategy. I understand that the reality is what it is. There was a very funny thing. I actually, I'll back up 1 second, and just trying to keep mindful that I'm trying to get to the new stuff today. But as soon as, when I start to review it, I think of other things. If anybody has not seen the documentary Downloaded, I think it's on Netflix. It's the story of Napster. Feels a little dated because it's about Napster, but it is really, really relevant in terms of how the industry freaked out and dealt with by choosing to ignore the new reality that Napster pointed to. And it's just a phenomenal insight into how all this stuff happened. And there's a little clip of Jon Stewart in there. I think it's Jon Stewart saying like that everybody was freaking out. The major labels were freaking out over Napster because they felt like they were the only people who had the privilege of ripping artists off. And now this download platform is like ripping artists off. So they got mad, which is funny because I'm like, okay, yeah, streaming sucks, but like major labels suck too. So it's not like it all of a sudden got really bad. It's just bad in a different way. I would say it's also very good in a different way. So that's just that. Okay, so foundational principles very quickly. This is number one, and this is everywhere. And I would say it's the number one thing to take away is that whatever you do, you're telling a story. I'll go through the other ones very quickly, but I was actually just reading this book the other day, This is Marketing by Seth Godin, which I have in my notes to give a little shout out to. He's great. He's not a music guy, although he was involved in the music industry before. He's like a marketing guy. He feels a little slick and cheesy sometimes, but he has actually a lot of really good things to say. And he's great. I love Seth Godin. Actually, that gives me more confidence in him that you love him, because he is really good. Sometimes I'm like, oh, did I just get like roped into like some like self-help thing and I just am too naive to see, but he's really good. And I'm just going to read you one thing that he says in his book, and I marked the page down. And it is this in a nutshell. So it says, every slice of every interaction ought to reflect the whole. Every time we see any of you, we ought to be able to make a smart guess about all of you. So that means your album cover, the album title, the way that your auto respond email when somebody emails you, the little Instagram blurb that says who you are, things like that. The best example that I always think of this, and I don't think they're using this tagline anymore, but ECM Records, I talked about them last time, whether or not you know them, they're a really major jazz, classical, new music label, and they're able to tie in a ton of different types of music in one kind of vision. And the tagline that at least they used to use, somebody can tell me maybe they're not using it anymore, is that they describe themselves as the most beautiful sound next to silence. Now, that seems a little cheesy, maybe, but also I was like, what's so great about that? Well, what's so great about that is it makes an assumption that if you respond to that, you are also the type of person who would consider silence to be beautiful. Maybe if you're quarantined and your kids are jumping all over you, you understand that in a different way, but it has kind of almost a spiritual, meditative, music as therapy and spiritual practice overtones, but they said it in like 8 words, the most beautiful sound next to silence. And that's great. That's telling a story. The other things I'll go through a little quicker. You have to get the smallest viable audience. Seth Godin also talks about this. We are all dealing with a micro niche, no matter who we are. Even major stars are dealing with micro niches now. Like an album selling like Thriller probably will never happen again. Gold, platinum albums, like that's just a thing of the past. So speak in the strongest, clearest way possible to the smallest viable number of people. What that does is it just means that you're saying your story and you're not like watering it down. In my graphic design background, there's a thing in graphic design. If you are in a room with 9 people and you're all designing a logo together, you're gonna get a logo that everybody can live with, but nobody loves. It's by definition, it's like designed by committee. Some things are better done by committee, a board or things like that. Designing a logo is not one of them. You want to make a strong statement, get a good designer and let them do their thing. And don't have everybody tweak it, and you're going to end up with something that nobody really loves, and that's not strong. Technology is your friend and mine. I'll just say technology is a means to an end. It's very easy to get caught up in technology being an end in and of itself. I'm dealing with this right now as I'm trying to learn the Logic Pro X like music composition platform. It's like always a pull to be like, oh, well, what about the sequencer, and what about the synth that can do all these different oscillators? It's only a tool to make music. Social media is only a tool, is a technology to get your message out. A website is only a tool to get your message out. So don't worry about the technology on its own, because it can be very alluring and very cool, but it has to do something. Build and serve a community. This ties into all these other things, but I always encourage artists to think of themselves as part of a community and what they can offer. And the biggest example for me in my experience is this. Like, I was just talking to a friend of mine last night, and he wanted my advice on like how to monetize video. And it's not that I'm an expert on that, but I have experience in that, and I try to serve my community. If I want to find an interesting new Jewish music festival happening in Brazil, and who the contact is, not that I'm contacting them now, I call him. So he's offering that as a specialty. And I think we all have those specialties. And you have to serve your community, and your community is also your fans. I encourage people to reach out and speak directly, one-on-one, personally with your fans, because they're the people that are sustaining you, and likewise, and vice versa, sorry. Do, analyze, tweak, and I put a little DAT tape there because that's an acronym of this this technology that we probably all used to use in studios back in the day. Maybe some still do. And with everything from music to business to email subject lines, and it can get very granular, but with everything you want to do, analyze, tweak. That's the process of it. Okay, so that was the how, and this is the what, and I put this little cartoon in there that creativity is done in a last-minute panic, which I think we can all probably identify with. Okay, so digital distribution. I'll go through this very quickly because it's kind of self-explanatory. So this is the method by which you're putting the music out there, not the way that fans hear the music. You just have to have a timeline. Your timeline can be 20 minutes. You know, like, what's her name? That bass player who got all the Grammys and stuff recently, Esperanza Spalding. She did did somebody just write that before me? Oh, just letting you know at 10:15. Okay. God, I always do that. Okay. Esperanza Spalding, on a live stream to her supporters, recorded, I think maybe even released an album in one stretch of like 10 hours. That's a hell of a way to tell a story in a good way. That's great. Your release timeline doesn't have to be planning out a year in advance, but know what you want to do and work backwards from there. There are various platforms to release music, which we'll go through. They're all kind of the same. Somebody last week, I'm sorry, I'm not remembering who it was, also talked about a free platform that he had used. That's great. If you can get it for free, that's great. Just make sure that the platform is going to deliver your music to all the places, Spotify, Apple Music, etc. Make sure that they can help you if the data gets messed up. Like if somebody has a similar or the same name as you, the band, make sure that they can go in and help separate that so you're not being confused with somebody else. And I would say overall, if they're putting in all the bells and whistles, they're going to help you get on playlists. The mass market digital distribution platforms don't really do that. I wouldn't depend on that. If it happens, great, but don't sign up with them because they're going to help you get on, you know, the Rap Caviar or whatever that huge playlist is on Spotify and get you 1 million fans. I don't believe that's going to happen. If they work on commission, there's a bit more of incentive, but most of these are flat fee. Just do your research and pick one. These are 3 of them. I've used the first 2. They're both fine. But make sure it works for you. That's the basic thing. Bandcamp is the best single platform for independent musicians because they have an editorial platform, a whole editorial system built into it. They have Bandcamp Daily, Bandcamp Weekly. They do scene profiles. They do genre profiles. They're great. I have a resource sheet that I'm going to send to everybody at the end of this and in a follow-up email. So I have a few things on there. I made a video last year about using their tagging system. just in general, use everything that they have available, and read the Bandcamp user guide, and you'll be ahead of like so many other musicians, because so many people just don't use all the stuff they have. There's a lot of great stuff on there. Others are YouTube and SoundCloud. SoundCloud is like, I think you probably already know if it's good for your genre. They're kind of genre focused, I think, on like remixes and electronic music. And everybody's always saying they're going to close next week. YouTube is still a music platform. My advice would be put your music up there, even if it's an album cover video or a still photo, because eventually somebody's going to put it on there. There's also monetizing, which we'll get into a little bit later, of videos. I'm not sure how much relevance that has, but it is a good thing to think about. Okay, I think that's where we stopped. I'm just looking. Yeah, okay, music delivery. Okay, so now is the conversation about streaming. So this is the thing that musicians love to complain about, often rightly so. Most fans aren't even aware that, as far as I know, this is anecdotal, by the way, but most like music fans who are not musicians don't even realize that streaming, the revenue is much less. So I would be careful about how much you complain about it publicly. See if you can spin it in a positive way. If you don't like it, but I'll talk about like not doing streaming in a minute. So the biggest thing with streaming is that it's not downloads and it's not CDs. So you see all these people post like online and they're like, oh, I got a million streams and I only made $200 or $100. Well, the barrier to entry, as I was saying before, for listening, I can check out a band, very quickly and very easily on Spotify, and I don't have to make a commitment to them. And in the old paradigm, I wouldn't even have heard them. So it's a much lower investment that the listener is making. And I think we should capitalize on that as far as building our community of fans. So I'm not saying it's fair that they pay that low. And the whole reason why if you watch the Netflix Napster documentary, you'll understand why streaming pays so little. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying it's cool that like some people at Spotify are getting rich while we're making nothing. That's the bad part. But the good part is that you can use it to build an audience. Hold on. I didn't even put anything else here. So I'll go through this quickly, but I'm just looking through my notes on this. There are a lot of ways that you can kind of experiment with streaming to get people into your orbit. For one, on Spotify, you can list your gigs there. I'm forgetting the name of the platform. It's either Bands in Town or Songkick. I think it's Songkick. If you have an account on there, which is free, and you use Spotify, Songkick, thank you, Ben. If you get an account there and you list your gigs and it's tied to your artist on Spotify, your artist profile, your gigs will show up there. Now, you can list online, yes, Tourbox, great, thank you. Check out that in the chat. That's the artist interface for Songkick to list your gigs. You can list online concerts there, I'm sure, and even now be using that. So that will be on your profile. There is a way to list merch there. I haven't done that. Maybe Ben knows, but a lot of bands, it seems like there may be a little bit higher barrier to entry there. You can have your merch on there. You can at least make an artist profile and put a band description and your social media links on there. The way that you do that is that you get the Spotify Artist app, or you log into the Spotify Artist platform on a desktop computer or the app. That will allow you to update your profile, to put recommended recordings on there, to put links on there. It won't allow you to list your gigs in the same way. I would advise using this Tourbox and Songkick thing that Ben Osborne put in the chat, but I would advise using that as much as possible. You can put photos. It can be a way of drawing them in, and you can get them into your orbit. So Ayala just asked, do you need to pay them to put merch on there? You may. I have not done that. I do know that the Spotify Artist is free and the Tourbox thing is free. So you can at least list gigs and make a profile on there. The next thing I would go to on streaming, the next really important thing is playlists. And I think this is all, there's more to talk about streaming, but I'll move on from here. But there are 3 types of playlists on Spotify. And I said this last time, there are many streaming platforms. I know statistically, because I looked it up the other day, as of last Tuesday, Spotify was still the biggest streaming platform. I'm sure it still is. It's like 40% of the market, and the others go down from there. Apple Music is next. I know Apple Music uses playlisting, but as I said last week, the field of potential things that you can do as a musician in the business realm is so wide. I will better serve you guys in this time that you're taking to listen to me if I talk from my own experience. My music is on Apple Music. My label puts that music on Apple Music, but I, as a user, don't use it. I know much more about Spotify. I would imagine a lot of it is the same. And if I'm saying something maybe that's notable that doesn't apply to Apple Music and you're an Apple Music fan, you can put it in the chat. But I'm going to speak about my experience because that's what I can offer the most help with. So Spotify has 3 types of playlists. And as an artist, what you're putting time into, I would say it's really only worth it doing one of them. So I'll go through the others very quickly. One is algorithmic. This is, as the name implies, automatically generated by the Spotify system to recommend music to you. So they have release radar. They have your top releases, your top albums of last summer. That's very cool to go back and listen to that. But it's based on your usage of Spotify. Discover Weekly is great. It's one of my favorite things to listen to. And it's kind of disconcerting how much the Spotify, Big Brother machine knows about you, because they pretty much hands down, I like everything on that. So that's music that you will like that you haven't listened to, I think. I haven't really heard much music that I've already heard on there. It's about discovering new music. As an artist, you can't get yourself onto somebody's Discover Weekly because it's algorithmic. The next one is Spotify curated playlists. These are the largest, by and large, the largest playlists on Spotify by streaming number and followers. These are playlists that are curated by the Spotify staff. They're paid employees. Many of them are very good. They're very they're awesome. The avant-garde jazz playlist is great. They have like Afrobeat. I mean, whatever you want, they have it. Those are very hard to pitch to them and get onto. There's not really an established way to get onto that because everybody wants it. There have been rumors and controversies over like Spotify taking a lot of money for major labels to put on their playlists, and also Spotify themselves commissioning artists to make music. They don't pay them royalties. They'll pay them like $500 to make a song, and then they'll funnel their listeners onto their playlists to listen to artists that they have paid off, and that they're like, it's like this revenue thing. As far as I'm concerned, that's not even a controversy. If they're not doing it, then they're almost like stupid as a corporation, because that's what corporations exist to do. I'm sure they're doing it. Assume that they're doing it. It's like modern payola. It's bad, but in my opinion, don't worry about it. Like, if you want to fight Spotify, more power to you. But I think we should use it for our own benefit, and it is what it is. So the third type of playlist, and before the call, I was just doing this morning, is user-generated playlists on Spotify. That's any Spotify user. I think you probably have to be a paid user, but you might not, because they have a free platform. You can make your own playlist. You just make a playlist, add songs to it, put a little cover image, boom. Some of these playlists have millions of fans. Some of them have hundreds of fans. These playlists, if you do your research, you can, sorry, just looking at the chat comment. Do you need to pay them to, oh, you don't need to be paid for this. I'm sorry, Ayala, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Just clarify in the chat, sorry, and I'll read it. You don't need to be paid for what? Oh, you don't need to be on a paid member to make a playlist. Okay, good, thank you. So users can make playlists, and you do your research, search on Spotify. You can look for an artist and then look in their About section. I don't know why this isn't in the mobile app. It's only on desktop. But in the About section on the right side on desktop, you see playlists that artist appears on. Now, if it's a huge artist, they're all going to be Spotify playlists, of course. but smaller artists, and once in a while, you'll see a playlist that is listed there that's a user-generated playlist. And you can tell because when you click on the playlist in the description, it says curated by Spotify or whatever it says. You'll see that it's a Spotify playlist. Just to note that a lot of people put images, their little playlist image, they make it look like a Spotify playlist, but it's not. So just look at the username of the person who made it or the entity that made it. If you find a playlist that you think your music would be good for, look at the username. There's no way to contact them directly. I think you might be able to do it if you go into the Spotify Artists app. I haven't had luck with that. What I do is click on their user profile. Some people will even put their email address or a website in their user profile. Many don't, but I just did this morning. I was pitching my band, Zion 80, which is like a Jewish Afrobeat jazz band. So I was looking for instrumental Afrobeat jazz funk playlists. I found one. I found the guy. His name was not Joe Smith. It was a kind of unique name. I don't remember what it was. But I looked him up, and he was on Facebook and he was on Instagram, and he used the same profile picture on there. That's very common. It was a sweet picture of him with I assume, his son or daughter on there. It was an artistically done photograph. So I just messaged him on Instagram. Hey, found your playlist. I really like it. Actually, I'm really into this artist. By the way, here's my band. Here's a song you might like. Put the Spotify link. And I've gotten several. I haven't gotten placements yet for my band. I've gotten artists on my label several placements, one of which ended up being quite large with like, I think 300,000 streams last year for one song that we put out by Yemen Blues. It happened that the user that I pitched, we happened to have gone to the same school, different years apart, and we knew a bunch of people in common. I have a feeling that the people on this call who are dealing with real niche, small, creative, avant-garde, whatever music communities, you're going to find that. Like, you'll find a user and they'll be like, oh, I didn't know that guy had, or that woman had a playlist that had 10,000 users on it. I'm going to reach out to them. A lot of them will just ignore you, but I've gotten, like, at this point, maybe 5 or 6 good placements on playlists, and you'll see the numbers when you go in. The numbers will go up. And it's not just numbers. You want to get new fans into your orbit. So that's streaming in a nutshell. And if there are other questions about streaming, because we could do a whole 2-hour workshop just on streaming, you can put it in the chat now, or better yet, maybe wait until the end. So I'm going to go a little quicker through the other stuff, but that is worth spending time on. Download, I'll just say everybody knows the download platforms. People still use it, but I feel like overall, there's a bit of a, what do you call this? A hyperbole? It's like a reverse bell curve. Like, a lot of people listen to music on the cheap, low barrier end of streaming, where you don't have to pay anything or very little. And the middle of, in my opinion, downloads and even CDs has gone way down. But then on the other end, you have like vinyl and cassette and really kind of super niche music delivery methods. So I think that's increasing over here, and the streaming is increasing. And the middle, which includes download, is not so much. The exception to that is Bandcamp, because Bandcamp has like super music heads, and we should never forget that streaming and a low, what do you call it, lossless FLAC download, the file name FLAC, if they have a good listening system, they'll hear a big difference between a stream on Spotify, which is like an MP3 quality more or less, and a lossless FLAC download from Bandcamp. So I always say when I'm getting the word out about Bandcamp downloads, just say high res. Just say high res downloads. Any music person that's into that will know what that is, and that's a selling point for it. So as with many things, Bandcamp is the exception. CDs, I already talked about. They are what they are. They're good. They're really good as merch to sell at gigs, which we'll get into a little bit later. I'm just going to leave it at that. Vinyl, I just searched a picture on vinyl and found this cool vinyl that I included here as an image. Bandcamp is much higher quality. Yeah, Tom is saying that. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, Tom is an artist on Chant Records, full disclosure. Yes, and has a great record called Dark Ages. I feel like I can plug people on my label as long as it's not me, but it's a great record. So this was just a cool vinyl. And like the thing about this, like you can see this like little red vinyl that I included here, like it's cool. It probably didn't cost that much more than regular vinyl because the packaging is pretty minimal, but like, it's cool. And it's probably, it looks like it's like an English ska record. You can tell from the checkers and like somebody likes the people skanking on the label on the record. And different color vinyl is awesome. Last year I bought an album that I already have, I think, on CD. It's the Last Exit Iron Path record, which is my absolute favorite record, with Laswell and Peter Brutzman and Ronald Shannon Jackson. But it was a black and red marble vinyl, and it made me feel like I was 17 again. So I coughed up the $35. I haven't bought many records recently, but that's one that I bought. So that's a cool thing as an object, an art object. That's what vinyl can be a lot. There are many other things. Cassette seems to be making some kind of a backdrop. I got into like a whole, Sonny Chirac. Sorry, I'm a guitar player. I cannot forget to mention Sonny Chirac. Thank you. He's like of course I forgot him. He's one of my favorite guitar players. But there are so many other possibilities. I got into like a little Twitter battle on about cassettes. I'm like, why? Every time you listen to a cassette, it gets a little less quality. But you know what? If you're into that, do it. It's fine. That's great. Like, there are people who are into that. Tom, I think maybe you're chatting your number and stuff. It's fine. Now everybody knows. Hey, call Tom after the call. I'm just kidding. No problem. Okay, so there are lots of possibilities, other things to talk about. Okay, so the next is promotion. Yes, call Tom, it's fine. The first thing is, because I think a lot of artists, like us, like we're artists first. We're not salespeople, we're not marketers. Like that feels gross. And I know that this is how it feels to a lot of musicians. Last time I gave the example of an interview that I heard with Bill Evans, where he said if he was like sitting in his house, in his closet, and never came out and just played his beautiful chords on the piano, Miles would have found him. Well, not today. You got to be out there and you got to promote yourself. And you have to find a way that's comfortable for you. I'm not saying that you should like do these slick things that are not genuine for you, because like I said, everything is telling a story. I learned how to do this when I was crowdfunding for my band to make some money to like promote the residency that we did a couple years ago, which I'll talk about. You just have to do it. I think everybody that's on the call now understands that, but you have to. And my favorite example of promotion is the picture that I included here, if this rings any bells for everybody. Fugazi was a groundbreaking, independent punk band, if you want to call them a punk band. They're very wide-ranging. They're one of my all-time favorite bands. From Washington, D.C. They're one of the people in the band. They were the central band on the Discord record label, which has also always been a role model for me as far as DIY and embracing youth culture. Their concerts when I was in high school were $5 all ages. If they couldn't do $5 all ages, they wouldn't play the show. They were the first band. It's funny to say, they were the first band that I felt like cared about me as a fan. You could stay and this is way before social media. This was in the 90s and late 80s. You could hang out after any Fugazi concert and they would come out and talk to you. If you had the persistence and your mom or dad would wait an hour to pick you up, you could, and I talked to them many times. I had many conversations with Ian MacKay and Guy Picciotto, and it was awesome. So they didn't sell t-shirts famously. Their lack of promotion and marketing was their promotion and marketing story, because they were a band that targeted kids who were about music and values and culture. So somebody had the brilliant idea to make and sell t-shirts that said, this is not a Fugazi t-shirt. And that became their brand. I hope they weren't selling them in secret. They may have been, but that was their brand. John Zorn, who is like my mentor and, I'm very close with and have worked with a lot, his brand, he would probably hate me calling what he has a brand. His brand is that he is a secret club. If you know about Zorn, you're already cool, because you're not going to find out about him in mainstream places. Now, he's been featured in mainstream places, famously, or whatever, infamously. Stephen Colbert had a very funny bit about him way back. You can Google that and find it. But he didn't give interviews. He was he's not really a reclusive person, but he was portrayed as being elusive and reclusive, and that was the mystery. So that's fine. I would probably advise against doing that today because he also happened to have been on a major label in the 80s and had a big audience. But hey, do it and embrace it. And I'm not criticizing him at all. I support him 100%. And he has now turned this into something where he has what I think we all want, which is complete artistic self-determination. He answers to nobody, absolutely nobody. And he makes amazing work. And he's still one of my role models. And, you know, and I'm lucky. I feel very privileged to count him as a close friend of mine as well. Okay. So you got to do it. The number one promotion tool, which I want to say, like, if you think in your mind, some people know this, some don't. The number one promotion tool in the whole world is email. It's the least sexy thing to use. It's the most boring thing. It's the oldest form of online communication, right? Other than those like chat rooms that they used to have like years and years ago. It's the number one thing. I see it every time I put an email about a release on Chant Records. More people will download it and click on it and go to it and be into it from email than anything else. So that's the number one focus of email. When you have somebody's email address, you own your method of communication with them. If you have them on Facebook, you're renting it from Facebook. Same with Instagram and Twitter. Facebook could change its algorithm tomorrow, which it's done many times. If you have a band page on Facebook, there are businesses that built their whole model on being able to broadcast to their hundreds of thousands of Facebook followers on their page. And overnight, Facebook made it so in order for your fans to see what you're doing, you have to pay Facebook, okay? That's gross, but it's also, okay, it's big business. I mean, that's what it is. Get their email address and you will be able to communicate with them when and how you want. Okay, so website is still necessary. Many people have asked me because I do web design. I used to do freelance web design. I now do like technology and web stuff, my day job for a media company. You need a website, but a website is not how people will find you. It's the destination. It's not the entry. That being said, have a website, update it. The thing I hate the most is to get really into a band or an artist and you go to their website and it's like upcoming, well, not now, but upcoming concerts. And it's like in August in 2013, we'll be in New York. And I'm like, great. Oh, wait, that's 7 years ago. So, or 6 years ago. Keep your website updated and you have to make it easy to update. If you know some coding and you know some other things, great. But there are many, many platforms that you can use that are cheap and that are really good for musicians. So I would advise, all other things being equal, not having any other information about what you do. Squarespace is the best website builder platform for musicians. I would say hire a designer. Pay, like, I'm sure that there are people who do it for cheap on like Fiverr or something, one of those websites, and there are probably a lot more people doing that now. Hire somebody to build the website for you and then have them show you how to edit and update it. They sell it as being something that you don't need to know anything to do, and technically that's true, but you're going to run into things that you want to do that won't be obvious. But it's not a complicated thing to do. Also, Squarespace, the underlying software, the code base, will be updated without you knowing it and without you having to do anything. You can also buy a domain name for them. I have one of my music websites on Squarespace, and it's like, just Google like promotional codes because you'll find them. Lots of podcasts offer promotional tools. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's like $100 a year, and then that's all you'll pay. That covers everything. So I would say to use Squarespace. You can also sell stuff on there. They have a platform, I think it's Square, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, but they have a platform where you can sell CDs. When I sell a CD for that band, I don't sell that much online. You just get an email and it says, this person ordered a CD. The money goes into your PayPal. They have an address and you send them a CD. Easy. These are the things that should go on your website. You have to have a bio. And remember, all of this tells your story, from the color scheme that you use to the image that you use. I'll just go through it quickly. Put your bio in there. Put your upcoming tour dates, even now, and especially if they're living room concerts. Treat your living room concerts and your live streams as live dates. Build up the same excitement. Make a little flyer, do a little a promo video for them, I would say. If you're doing that, really do it. Put music on there. You can embed from Bandcamp. You can embed from SoundCloud. You don't have to give it all away if you don't want to, but make a way for me as a fan or a booker or whoever or a press person to hear the music. Put some video on there as well. I'll get to that more when I get to EPK, but put some YouTube videos. Also, people ask sometimes, should you put video directly on your website or on YouTube? Put it on YouTube and embed it on your website. That's the default. Don't anything that you're accessing online takes up bandwidth, and you have to pay for that as a website owner. Use YouTube's bandwidth and don't waste your own, and don't waste your file space. Even if you have unlimited, embed it, because that's what everybody expects to use anyway. Put photos on there, even if they're iPhone photos. It's worth it to have a photo session. You might not be able to do that now. Have photos, have somebody be able to see you, have them see what you're doing, tell the story. I don't know if anybody's heard of this, I guess he's called electronic or industrial or whatever they're calling it. There's this great artist that I found out about 6 months ago. I don't know that much about him. It's awesome name too. I believe his name is Author and Punisher. That's his name, Author and Punisher. So maybe not somebody that you want to have coffee with, but like a little intense, maybe alcohol, but via Zoom, of course, nowadays. But I looked up a picture of him, and he manufactures, he's like a mechanical engineer or something. He manufactures these insane instruments that make insane sounds. And everything about him tells this story of like these crazy, he could probably do it, with an online synth and a sequencer, but he does it with these crazy big, like he's got this thing that makes his bass sounds, and it's like this big, and it's got this lever, and it's really cool, and it's very performative and visual. His music is also really good. So seeing photos of him helps tell his story. Have a store on there to sell stuff. Even if you're like, PayPal me $20 here and I'll send you a CD, even if it's that low tech. Have a mailing list sign up and make it easy for them to sign up for your mailing list. Put that everywhere. Don't be obnoxious about it. Let me rephrase that. Don't be very obnoxious about it. You're allowed to be a little bit obnoxious when you want somebody's email address. You're allowed to have something that comes and takes over the website that's like, hey, do you like my music? Sign up for my mailing list. Give them a way to click out of it, but you can pitch them to sign up for your mailing list a little bit. And people will email you and tell you that it's annoying and why are you doing that? I already signed up. But don't worry about it. Do it a little bit, not too much, but put your mailing list sign up on every single page. You can put it at the bottom, you can put it at the top. And give people something when they sign up for your mailing list, even if it's an MP3. It's kind of beyond the scope of this, but in MailChimp, which I recommend as the best email platform, up to 2,000 people, it's free. It's very easy to use. It's the best email platform I found. There are other really good ones. It's my experience. I have an automatic reply that goes out to everybody that signs up for the mailing list that includes a bit.ly link with a free download or stream. I put it on SoundCloud with a private link. So as soon as they sign up for the mailing list, they get a thank you and here's a whole bunch of music. You don't have to give a whole bunch of music. Give one song. Give a free unlisted YouTube video, something that they can only get for signing up for your mailing list that doesn't cost you a lot and doesn't require a lot from you. You can set it and forget it. There are some things that you don't want to do, set it and forget it. Mailing list sign up, you should. Also, don't put anybody on your email list without asking them. It's technically, I don't even know if it's legal. It's something that people do. You can do it if you want to. I would say don't do it. It's not nice. It feels spammy. And your email list over time will do more for you if you allow people to give you permission to do it. Seth Godin talks a lot about permission marketing. This is an example of that. Get permission from them to talk to them because there are people who will want to talk to you and want to hear from you. Put any press coverage that you've gotten on your website. Just list it, just a link. We were in the New York Times, click here. We were in whatever, click here. EPK is an electronic press kit. There are places you can go to pay them to make an EPK for you. You can just do this on your website. Just make sure that people know what it is. Make it short and sweet. If you're, I was going to say a festival booker. If anybody who is in the realm of press, even if it's somebody who's going to interview you via Zoom and have you do a concert, is going to look at your website. Make it really easy and quick for them to get who you are right away, like 30 seconds. Somebody who's going to look at your EPK is not a fan necessarily. It's more like they're looking at 100 of these today. How are you going to make yourself stick out? I'll tell you one anecdote that I hired a consultant to talk to me about my music business a little while ago. And he looked at my videos on my EPK, and the first song up there was my band playing in front of a lot of people. But the video took like a minute to really get going and get energetic. He was like, why did you make me spend a minute of you setting up the tune? Make a video of little snippets of your highlights. Make a highlight reel. It's something that feels counterintuitive for us as artists to do, because like, no, my songs are 20 minutes, so you better sit down and listen. That's fine for a fan. Tell that in your story. If you're gonna be pitching to somebody booking a festival, give them your highlights. Little 20-second bits. Cut that into a video and put it on your EPK. You just have to do that and put the most amazing things about you first. Have a way for people to contact you. Have a link in the top of your website that says contact, and have a contact form or email address. It's amazing how many people don't do that. Like they don't give you a way to get in touch with them. And then also put your social links like in the footer or at the top. Just put them where. Always give people, no matter who they are, from a journalist to a fan, give them a way to contact you and check you out wherever they already are. If I'm a total Instagram freak, obsessed with Instagram, be on Instagram and put your Instagram link there so they can get to you. Okay, so that's that. Social media. Wow, okay, it's 10:50. Okay, not doing so bad because we might not get to everything. Okay, we'll figure out what we're going to do about that, but I'm going to keep going through. Actually, maybe, Rebecca, I'll just ask you, do you think it's better to like really go through everything quickly or go through it more in depth and then leave a few things out? Probably quickly, right? Okay.
I'm saying quickly, and then if people need to get off, they can get off, and if people want to stay and ask more questions,
okay,
they can.
Great. So I'm just going quickly through just to take a little step back. I have promotion, I have press, radio, licensing, crowdfunding, and live performance. You know what? I think actually I'm going to do a little of both. I'm going to pick the sections that I think are most important. So if it's okay for now, I'm going to skip press, or maybe I'll go through it in 1 minute, and I'm going to skip live performance for obvious reasons. We'll talk about social media. I want to get to crowdfunding and licensing, because I think those are important. The biggest lesson on social media is to pick one social media platform that you're focused on. If you have a team of people who are doing your social media, great. I don't have that. It's just me. So I found what I think is the best platform for me, and I focus on that. If I have 5 minutes in a day, I'll do that. That platform may be different for everybody. I'm on all the platforms, but like on Facebook, on my band page and on the label page, I post like maybe once a week. On Instagram, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. On YouTube, a few times a month, I'll put a video up. My one platform is Twitter because it works for me. But I will say for musicians, if you're visual primarily, if your music has always a visual component, if it's like a solo project that you're playing all kinds of different instruments and it's cool to watch, Instagram is probably the best for you. And then you can also put those videos on YouTube. Facebook, to be honest, I don't think it's really good for anybody as a promotional tool. But the one thing I'll say, promote your music from your personal Facebook page, not your band page, because people will not see your band page unless you pay them. That's a separate thing in terms of the ads. We can get into that another time. But if anything, post from your band page and then share it from your personal page so people see it, because you'll see on there the numbers. You're not getting any likes on your band page unless you're paying. Okay, so you have to define what your goals are in terms of social media. That's different for everybody, but see what's good and bad about each social media platform. Define your goals and work backwards from there. This speaks for itself. Don't ever pay a penny for followers, for likes, for views. It's something that people used to do. I know musicians, even avant-garde musicians who do it. It's not worth anything. When I look through a Twitter profile that has 50,000 followers and their last 10 tweets have no retweets and no likes, those are fake. Those are fake, or you found some magical way to get people who don't care to follow you. But either way, those are worthless for us. So don't do it. It's a waste of money. Twitter, I spoke about, Twitter allows you to link to external pages. Facebook doesn't really like you to link to anywhere except Facebook because they're Facebook. Instagram is always, or not always, but primarily visual. Twitter allows me to post a Bandcamp link, a YouTube video, a SoundCloud link, a website link. If you set it up right, when you post a link, a card, what's called a Twitter card, will show up with a nice big image, which is the featured image of whatever you're doing, like your album cover or your picture, and then a little description. It's really good. The only bad thing about Twitter that I find is that individual music fans seem, for me, to not be the majority of people who are interacting with me on Twitter. It's more, it's other musicians. It's like press outlets and writers and bloggers. None of this is bad, but you might not be able to connect with your fans directly. But if you find a way to do it where you're getting retweeted and starting conversations, the fans will see the residual effects of that. One thing I'll say, okay, the only other thing I'll say about Twitter is about getting more fans. Like anything, you're telling a story. Don't always, the way to approach any social media is about having a conversation and sparking like little people engaging with you. It's not always about like, look at this, buy this, look what I did, look what I did, look what I did. Like that's what people do on social media. Don't do that. Do that, but don't only do that. I tweeted out yesterday or the day before to the label, to my label Twitter account. I said, what music is getting you through this? That's all I did. From that, I got like, 1,200 people saw it, and I started a lot of conversations. I wasn't promoting my label's music at all. I didn't make any mention of, oh, well, if you're having a hard time, listen to this, and it's my artist. No, I said, for me, honestly, I said, like, Keith Jarrett is getting me through this. Norwegian black metal is getting me through this, because I find that like ambient music and like extreme metal often have the same very calming mental effect on me. That's just me. That's a whole other conversation. It's just starting a conversation, because that's really ultimately what it's about, is conversation and engagement. I'm also sending a tweet out tomorrow. Actually, Ben Holmes is on this call. I think he's still on. He's an artist that we work with on my label. His single from his album Naked Laura is coming out tomorrow. I'm going to post about it. But if I see something funny that has nothing to do with my label directly, but tells my story, I tweeted out an image of like, I made a little silly meme about like that band members have to stand 6 feet apart from each other. But if you're a drummer, people should stand 12 feet apart from you. It was a little dig on drummers. No offense if you're a drummer, but I just thought it was funny. And like, I just tweeted it because people in my realm may or may not think it's funny. My kids don't think it's funny, but some other people might think it's funny. Okay, so that's Twitter in a nutshell. Facebook, we already talked about. Instagram, we talked about. Just make note of, if you decide the one platform that you're going to really focus on, check out what other people are doing and emulate that, okay? For example, I think many people are familiar with the band Wolfpack. If you don't or whatever, their videos are a prototypical example of how to market and brand yourself and tell your story. Look at any Wolfpack video. It all tells the same story. It's very compelling. You may or may not like their music. I think they're great. They have a huge following. They have no label. They have no manager. I think they do all their own social media. They're really great. So they're worth looking into and emulating. There are other platforms, Snapchat, TikTok. You can look into those and find what works for you. Okay, so a few more words on promotion. Like it or not, we live in an intensely visual culture, and you have to have video. You don't have to focus on it more than anything. You have to have a visual component. The example that I'll give of this, at the top of almost every newsletter I send out from my label, I put a YouTube. It's not an embed, it's a link, but in the form of a thing that looks like a YouTube video, and you click on it, it goes to YouTube. People click on that more than anything. It's a visual culture. Use video, have video. It can be an iPhone video, whatever. Make sure it tells your story and make sure that you're getting it out there. If you do one video this year, fine, but put it out there and have it at the top of your website. Have it, pin a tweet to your profile with that video. It's very, very valuable, and like it or not, it's where we are as a culture right now. The second is ads. I'll just say, I think it's worth it to spend a little bit of money, as much as we all probably hate Facebook in many ways. I think it's worth it to spend a little bit of money. You can spend $15 or $20 or even $5, and if it's done right, get people into your orbit. Do more research on that, but Seth Godin talks about this. If you don't have something specific that you're advertising and that you can measure how, like your return on investment for the ad, don't do it. But if you have an album, you want to get people to go to the Bandcamp page, whatever, ads can be useful. I have not done ads on other platforms. I only do them on Facebook. Google ads are also good, but that's kind of out of the scope. Okay, so press and radio very quickly. I'm including these together because I think basically what it is about aggregation. And this is something important to think about overall, is aggregation. Go to where your fans already are. So I'm just going to go through. Publicists, I feel mixed about publicists. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they can do a lot for you. Make sure that they're excited to work with you, and make sure that as much as possible, they can be accountable. They can't promise you that you're going to get a feature in the New York Times. Nobody can promise that, but just make sure that you're working with somebody good, and it's not a given that you have to hire them. When you contact press and stuff yourself, when you contact press and stuff yourself, just make sure you do all your homework. I'm blasting through this because we don't really have time. I think I'm going to plan on going till 11:10. Is that okay, Rebecca? I saw this coming. We did it last time. Great. Don't include attachments in emails. Put a link. Attachments are annoying. They clog up your email inbox. I get attachments all the time for artists pitching themselves to Chant Records. I don't like it. I'm still going to listen to it, but don't put attachments in emails. Put it all in there and put a link. Okay, licensing. There, this is where the money is. And I don't know if people are familiar with these two artists here. These are two artists whose careers were incredibly boosted and impacted by advertisements. The top is Leslie Feist, who's a great, or she goes just by Feist. She's a great singer-songwriter. Her music was in an Apple commercial, I believe. And the bottom is Alex Clare. I happen to like both of these artists a lot. They're kind of a little bit more mainstream. Not in a bad way. I mean, I think they're both great. Alex Clare basically was doing nothing musically. I think he was actually learning in yeshiva when his music was picked up by a Microsoft commercial, and now has been able to move that into quite a substantial career. So I think it's one of the few ways that musicians can now. Brian Adler, thank you for joining. And you have to run. Okay, I'll speak to you soon. Be well. That I think this is one of the few major ways that we can still earn money. You have to get your data together. You can Google this, get your metadata together. You can do this for free. I do it using iTunes. You put your music into iTunes and you fill out it has to be an MP3, not a WAV file. You fill out all the metadata and a cover image, and then you export the file, again, re-export it from iTunes, and then put that in, let's say, a Dropbox folder that you're sending to a music supervisor, and that will have all your metadata in it. Artist, title of the song, and then in the little notes section in iTunes, you put that you own the rights to the music, because this is the biggest thing. The biggest barrier to entry in licensing is artists who, not by malice or anything, or not for any malicious intent, we're just like, we can't be trusted to tell them that our music is, that we own it. So make sure you have all the data and get over that barrier of like, the music is registered, I own it, I own 200%, which we'll get into what 200% is. What does that even mean? But it's a thing. If you say that, that to me is as far as I know, is a little clue that you've done your homework and you know that 200% ownership is a thing in music. It seems ridiculous. No such thing as 200%, but yes, there is. Well, there is, but you don't think there is, but there actually is. 200% actually means 100%. You can look up what that means. But get your data together and be responsible, and make sure that anybody who has a stake in the ownership of the music has been contacted and they're registered and it's copywritten, okay? And then tell the people that you have all that stuff together. A lot of musicians don't have that together, and they will not want to work with you unless you do. And just a word of caution, if you do get through and your data is not together and it goes badly for them, you will basically be blacklisted because all the music supervisors know each other and they're not going to want to work with you. And I know people that's happened to, and it's really bad. So do your homework first. I don't mean to scare you, but like make sure, we can all do it. Just do your research and it's fine. There's no secrets. You don't have to hire a lawyer to do this. You can do it yourself. Licensing placements come in two forms, and it is what they say. Exclusive means this is the only place that your music is placed, like in a film or TV. This doesn't mean on Spotify or anything, but you know, a music supervisor will say, I love your song. You have to agree to an exclusive contract. That means your music for the term of the contract can't be in any other TV commercial, film, video game, movie trailer, etc. The exclusive placements are higher paying, but they're harder to get. Non-exclusive is what it means. You're going to put your music here. You have all the ownership set and all the paperwork is done, but you can give it to other people. The different levels of music licensing. There's stock libraries, low barrier to entry. They don't pay that much. I'll tell you honestly, I get a check every few months from BMI for like $200 to $300 because it's from stock libraries. If you put a lot of effort into it, you can do it. I don't think it's the best thing to focus on. If you have music just sitting around that you don't really feel that strongly about, sure, put it on, find some stock libraries, like Getty Images, or just look up stock music libraries. iStock Photo has a music library. But it pays very little. Like your music will be like in, let's say, like a reality TV show on HBO, and you'll get 95 cents, if you're lucky, every time it's put there. So 100 placements of that, great. That's like $95. But I wouldn't say to focus that much on it. The mid-level ones are good. These are intermediaries. They are gatekeepers. Music licensing houses that will contract with artists, and then they contact music supervisors. So you can look for these. There are lots of them. Basically, what they help you do is if you go directly to somebody who's placing music in a film and you only have 10 songs or even 50 songs, that's a lot of effort for the person to go through to get a placement, because chances are they're going to go through like, sorry, let me back. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. A director calls a music supervisor and they say, I want something that sounds like Let It Be, but we can't pay the Beatles estate $1 million. Get me something that's the same vibe, but that doesn't sound like imitation. So the music supervisor is going to start going through their list of music and their tagging system, whatever it is. They don't find anything. Then they call, or maybe they do, but they want lots of options. They call what I'm calling a mid-level music house. They say, I want this. What do you have? If they call me as an artist, they're going to have to call 100 artists. They want to call somebody who also has a library of 10,000 songs that they can listen to and find something. That library is looking for an artist with 10 songs, but that music supervisor is looking for a library with 10,000 songs. That's why contact a music supervisor directly, it's just not worth it for them. If they get the one magical song that's going to make you $50,000 and them $50,000, great. That's not so likely. So actually, that's all I'm going to say about music supervisors. You can reach out to them, but I would focus on the mid-level. Find music production houses, music licensing houses, and find ones that are specializing in the kind of music you do and reach out to them. Okay, I'm almost out of time. Okay, I'm going to get to this. You know what? I'm going to save that from David and Ben. I'm going to save that for the questions, but I will get to that. I just wanted to get to licensing is about building relationships. Do your homework, like I already said, and luck. Like with everything, luck is an important factor. Sorry. Okay. So I will stop with crowdfunding. I'm sorry I don't have more time, but 3 minutes is good. And we're not going to get into the other stuff today, but actually we'll share this deck. And if people look through it and have questions, that's great. I included the top three crowdfunding platforms that came to mind, and I crossed out the one that went under and brought a lot of artists with it as a cautionary tale. You can see Pledge Music there is crossed out. If you don't know about the Pledge Music fiasco disaster, Google it. and I will say this because it's public now. He told me originally in person. John Zorn lost $200,000 in the Pledge Music fiasco. It was horrible. Thank God he was able to survive, and his business was able to survive. They went under. They stole money. I had a very good experience with them a couple years ago, and they turned out to not be trustworthy. So obviously do your homework. People are, if you have to think from the perspective of a fan, and they're not paying you for your music in crowdfunding. What they're paying for is you're telling them a story, and they're getting engagement and connection to you, and they're a part of your story. That's what crowdfunding is about. It's about being a part of your story. And I will tell my crowdfunding stories very briefly. I did an initial, I've done 2 Kickstarters and 1 Pledge Music. And they were all successful, thankfully. They have different models. Kickstarter, as far as I know, this is still the model. If you set a goal of $10,000, if you don't make $10,000, you don't get anything. And that's actually very good. And it seems arbitrary, but it's not. You have to set your goal, and you have to work your butt off, and you have to meet it. So set a good goal, but be realistic about what you think you can raise, and tell your story. And like I said, my story is the first one I did was to raise a little bit of money, $1,800 for promotion. The second, I raised about $5,000 to make a record. I stupidly raised $0 for promotion, which I wouldn't do now. That was a mistake I will never do again. And then I raised about $10,000 for my last Zion 80 record, which did include some promotion. And, you know, miracle of miracles, the record did a lot better because I had to promote it. So that's my crowdfunding stories in a nutshell. 2 different crowdfunding models. Project-based, which is what I was talking about. You have a crowdfunding campaign. It's going to end in 3 weeks. You can look up the best length of time. Short is good because it turns it into a goal that you can see and reach, and then you're done. Patreon, which is the other little logo there, the line and the circle, that primarily is a monthly or weekly, I think monthly sponsorship where they give you $5 a month, $10 a month. That's great too, but you have to have ongoing work that you're creating, whether it's a video or a song or a book of poetry or whatever it is. So just look into the pluses and minuses with project-based versus ongoing sponsorship. Create many levels of support. Have something that's have a low barrier to entry. You don't have to do $1, but have something that somebody can get on either model, the project-based or sponsorship, for $5. Either just $5 period, send them a few songs, or $5 a month. And go all the way up. Like, go past where you think people will give. I didn't think anybody would give me more than $75 for my last Pledge Music campaign, but I made a $250 level and a $500 level. I think I got 1 $500 sponsorship and like 4 or 5 $250 sponsorships. Those were worth a lot. The higher price is going to give you a higher level of personalization. It doesn't mean that you have to do so much more work for the $500 level. What you have is you and your story. So one thing that I've seen artists do is, like, if you give me $1,000, I will make a personalized voicemail message on your machine with some music that's just for you. That's going to take you 45 minutes, but it's really cool and fun, and that's a way to do it. You can do individualized lessons as part of your campaign. Like in a CD, I thank people by name in the liner notes, and that costs like $100. Like, that doesn't take any effort from you, but it means something to them, because it's getting to the most important thing is that they are part of your story. And I'll just end with this, is what communicates value in anything is connection, and that they're a part of the story. So I'm going to stop now. We'll open up for questions. I will include the link to this, or we will include it in an email, I guess, a follow-up email, Rebecca, right? We'll do that. Okay, so sorry for going through fast. I'm very bad at determining beforehand how long something is going to take. So I apologize if we didn't get to things that people want, but let's talk now, and I can, Rebecca had something to say, but then I'll start.
John, do you just want to start with the chat comments and then we'll go from there?
Okay. Yeah, great. Okay, so I guess I'm going to end my share so I can see people, if that's okay. Okay, great, and the chat is right here. Oh wait, it disappeared, sorry. Hold on. Okay. Okay, so David, what degree do publicists help you get your music in hands of music supervisors? If not much, best practices on this. Publicists directly, as far as I know, don't help you do that. Publicists are more dealing with press outlets and radio as well. But it does point to a good question and a thing to remember, which I'm glad you brought up, is that music supervisors are music fans. So they want to find people that are not very well known, and they want to get an awesome placement for an artist that very few people have heard of, that the director flips out and is now, playing on their home stereo system all day. That's like the goal for music supervisors. So to the extent that a publicist will help you get word out about your music to fans, and some of those music supervisors will be fans, but that's kind of indirect. And then Ben said, echoing David Friedman's questions, is it smart to seek partnership with a publisher on this, or is there an advantage to going it alone? You mean publisher where is Ben? Publisher, like in terms of a music publisher?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Again, this is
a publishing deal, and I just have no idea whether to take it at the moment. So
yes, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I don't fully understand how these three things work: composition, publishing, and master rights. That whole ecosystem is a little bit of a mystery. I do know, I have seen many people, and I think this is a clue to the answer to your question being yes, it's worth it, that I've seen many avant-garde artists to like big pop stars recommending for musicians, don't give away the rights to your music, but publishing deals are really good. So in other words, as far as I know, what a publishing deal basically says is that you're sharing ownership of it with somebody, and that they are helping you get that music placed, performed. But publishing can have different connotations. So I'm sorry for that I don't completely know the answer. But I do think, because I'm not a songwriter, I'm like more, I guess, of a composer. And songwriters, to me, I find that they are often talking about publishing deals, and that they can be very good and very lucrative. That might mean that you sign a publishing deal with somebody who is trying to get other people to play your songs. That's one type of publishing deal. And I think there are others. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, great. Okay. David also said asking for money resources during pandemic, ethical implications. Yeah, I hear that. That's a big thing. And I think Ayelet and I were messaging about that. I think, like with anything, you're telling a story, be honest and be direct and be genuine. And I think I said last time, like tell people like, hey, I don't really know if I can ask you for money during this time. I'm not really sure. But what I will tell you is that for me, like you could say this kind of a story, for me, music has helped me get through this in a really important way. And music, like the famous quote from Albert Eiler, the name of the album, music is the healing force of the universe. Like we really believe that. Like music is not, obviously we agree it's not the same as like having shelter and food, but like we need it. And I think communicating that need and saying, if you have the means and you can give, it's going to be so much more appreciated. Now, I will tell you, like I said last week, until Bandcamp did their big promotion a couple weeks ago, I would have been more on the fence. I now think, yes, ask, be genuine and direct. But there were so many people that were giving money to Bandcamp on March 20th that the site crashed. My label in its own, I was able to send a musician, for us, a donation that I didn't take any part of as a label. I was able to send a musician about $700 who was extremely thankful for that got his people out and they gave donations. And that was like a good chunk of money for him. And people definitely felt like they were doing something important by giving money during this time.
Can I add one thing to that, John?
Yeah, please.
So I just want to add, because now I'm like in all of these conversations with foundations and philanthropists, that also people have been economically impacted differently right now, right? This is sort of the first wave, I think, of economic impact from this event that has primarily hit freelance folks and the gig economy, which is pretty much artists and many others, but that many people are still have their regular salaries and are not incurring even their regular cost of living that they have. And I think that's an opportunity. You know, there's been conversation about in the United States also trying to empower people to donate their economic relief checks that they're going to get, that if they actually haven't been impacted, since everyone's getting them, that they should donate them. So I think there's a way to phrase it that's also about, like, if you haven't yet, like, if you are able, if you haven't yet been impacted, this is an opportunity to help others. So I think there is a sort of framing that isn't yucky, because it's actually the reality that some people have their regular salaries and maybe won't even be impacted for the months, you know?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Ben asked, does Bandcamp subscription work similar to Patreon? In a word, yes. But Bandcamp is great because, I mean, obviously Bandcamp is for musicians. So on Patreon, it could be anything that you're producing. On Bandcamp, it's like you're giving them something. I mean, I think it's a monthly system, and that you should have something that you can give them every month. But one thing, which reminds me of, which is an important point and something that we should all remember, is that, and you can kind of make good use of this in all of your storytelling, is that things that musicians do on a daily basis to other people seem incredible. Like going to a rehearsal space and there's all these amps there, and you like pick one and you use that amp and you try the different ones out. A musician, I mean, now would probably be very thankful to be in a rehearsal space with other musicians, but like normal things like that, like going to a place and photocopying music, or, you know, like I've told a lot of stories about the difficulties of scheduling rehearsals in the old world with a 10-person band. It's insane. And people are like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Like, so on Bandcamp, this ties into your question, but on Bandcamp, you can give them like rough mixes and demos and things like that we don't even think of. That's just like what we get up in the morning and we make a demo before we had breakfast, you know, like, but if you're comfortable giving that to them, that can be what you give them. It doesn't have to be a finished track. It can be behind the scenes. It can be like just a list of your daily routines, things like that. So that's just something to think about. David said, might be a good idea for independent artists to consider environmental implications. Pressing media like cassettes or defunct formats may eventually in a landfill, may eventually end up in the landfill. It feels like a time we should all be conscientious of our environmental footprint. Yes, 100%. And that can ironically be a way to be like, you know, pushing Bandcamp downloads, because that has less of an impact. I'm sure that it has some nominal impact, but that's not the same. And also it's really hard. Like I got a few CD orders the other day and I went to the post office. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to do that. And I feel, I was like, well, should I give it to the mail carrier? Like, I feel a little weird about that. I don't want to hand that to him. He's already, I'm sure, totally stressed out. So mailing things might be hard. Ayal said, thank you for this question. PR versus playlist push services. It seems like in the price range that many indie musicians can afford hiring a PR service, you end up getting very little. Yes. Wouldn't it be smarter to hire a service that can push music directly into playlists, hence directly to people's ears rather than publications? Yes, totally. You can do that. And thanks for asking, because that's one thing I didn't have time to talk about. I haven't used those services. I would be wary again that they're just going to take your money and not do anything, because they can't really promise. But yes, I would say if you're going to do that, reach out to other similar artists and see what they recommend as far as who to use, because there are lots of different companies out there that do that. And also try it a few times on your own, just to know how long it takes to find a playlist, find the person, send them an email, send them another email, and either get a nice outcome of that, or decide that you're going to give up. Because then, you know, if they tell you, well, we used the 10 hours that you paid us for, but we only pitched to 2 playlists, I would say, well, I can do it in 45 minutes, so you're doing something wrong. So, you know, like, they have to be accountable. But I would definitely say don't dismiss that. It can be good. And I've heard that they're not so expensive. So that's another good thing. So hopefully, Ayal, that answers your question. Great, thank you. Oren, can you talk about what motivated you to start a label? Yes, I can. And just thinking how to organize this in a quick way. the biggest thing that motivated us is to kind of have the label be some glue in a community that already exists. I'll tell you the story of the starting of the label. See, I'm doing my storytelling thing, but this is the microcosm that shows the whole thing. So I was getting ready to do a gig, and I think we were playing in Houston with my band, and they needed bios. And I was looking up my now label partner and very close friend, Shania Blumenkrantz, to find out a list of some things that he had done recently, because he's always playing with somebody new. And I Googled his name, and I found an album on Bandcamp that they just threw up there. There was no information. One person bought it, and it was unbelievably incredible. It was a great record. All these amazing artists were on there. But not only had nobody heard it, but I was one of those people who haven't heard it. And I literally called him. I was like, dude, you put this album out and you got all these people on it? Like, why didn't you tell me about it? And he was like, I don't know. I didn't think of it. Like, I was like, it's incredible. And I bought it. So now 2 people bought it. And I was like, this is pointing to a problem that needs to be solved. I'm not saying, I'll be the first to say that on Chant Records, we're not making anybody a ton of money. We're not making anybody into a star. We are working on licensing. So hopefully we'll be able to make good money for artists on that. But it's taking a lot of work. What I can promise, though, is what my achievable goal was. If I have 10 people in my band, Zion 80, they're all individual musicians with their own band. I want to make a system so that everybody who cares about Zion 80, not that there's that many people, but if I have 100 fans, I want to make sure that all 100 of them know about Shanir's new record for no other reason than it's awesome. So I said, okay, so I can do that. I can send a tweet out. I can send a thing, check out Shanir's record. But what if we made a central place where a fan of Ben Holmes, because he's on the call now, or Brian Adler, who was here before, can come to a central place and be like, oh, Midwood, this other band, or Sandcatchers is also on here. So it's like it creates a web and an aggregation of that. That's essentially our goal. And also because it was increasingly frustrating to me that my close friends and really like people who I consider my family were putting albums up on Bandcamp and not doing it right and not telling people about it. And their website was like, it was like GeoCities from 1937. And it was like, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, it's like you're seeing somebody about to step in like a pile of dog poop. And like, I'm like, here, let me steer you here so you don't step in that pile right there. So it was, maybe that's a little, I don't mean to be patronizing, but I'm like, I know how to make a website. Like, let me help you, please. Like, your music is great. And like, I clicked on it and I got a virus on my computer. Like, that kind of thing was like, and people have said the same thing to me, like, wait, you didn't apply to the Krakow Jewish Music Festival? Like, what's wrong with you? You got to go there. Like, it was almost like that kind of thing. Like, I'm going to help you get on Bandcamp, and I'm going to help people on Twitter know about you. And I'm going to make sure that your files are set up right, and that your album cover image isn't blurry. Like, it's little things like that, but especially, honestly, like musicians my age, which is like most of the artists on the label, like 30s to 60s, few outliers, like Burton Green, who's in his 80s, and thankfully is healthy. And then other people who are like 20 who somehow figured out how to be a genius, like when they were just a teenager 2 years ago, which is not what I was doing. So that like people our age don't always know how to do this stuff. So that's it in a nutshell, Oren. Hopefully that answers. What else? Wow, it's only 11:27. That's amazing. Anything else I can talk for a few more minutes about? Well, I could share the little resources page that I made and just go through those very quickly. If that's good, or if people have any other questions. Okay, Ben, is there a value in re-pushing work that's already out as opposed to a new release? Wow, I'm so glad these people are asking questions, because you're like picking out the little things that I didn't say that are really good. 100%. A huge benefit that we have now that we didn't have before is that music is all music is new if somebody hasn't heard it yet. And you should always approach it with that, that mindset. In the old model, the age and relevance was like a line like this. Like if a release came out a year ago, like who cares? Now, maybe press, I wouldn't say like putting out a press release about an album you put out 3 years ago. But I'll just tell you an anecdote. Somebody in the Jewish newspaper in San Francisco the other day put out a list of a bunch of YouTube concerts that you could watch because you can't go to music now. And they put my band at the top of the list, which I was very thankful for. We played at this festival, Ashkenaz, in Toronto. People have probably been there and played there. And they recorded it. And this writer, Andy, put out that concert at the top. So that's just an example that we played at Ashkenaz in 2014. So that was at the top of a press feature in a Jewish paper about music you should listen to. Older songs are constantly being placed in film and commercials. Like Alex Clare, perfect example. His record came out like 2 years. He's giving up on doing music, doing something else, moved to another country, boom, Microsoft picked it up, and now he has a career. So playlists, music placements, all the really important, even Bandcamp, put it up there. So yes, 100%. Licensing related. Do music libraries that specialize in exclusive deals also demand exclusives as far as this are being presented within their platform? Do music libraries that specialize in exclusive deals also demand exclusiveness as far as being presented? Sorry, I didn't understand what you meant. Yes, in other words, if you send your album to them and they deal in exclusive deals, even if they haven't placed you in an exclusive placement, can you send your music to other places? And the answer is yes, they do demand exclusivity. And I will give you, I can't believe I didn't remember to say this, but my experience with exclusivity is that I right now am in an exclusive contract for two records that I made with a licensing house, one of these, exactly what you're talking about. Thank you for asking that again. And I've been with them for a year and a half, and they haven't got me any placements. When I myself am starting to pitch for Chant Records artists for licensing, I can't pitch my own music. I have that music tied up. So I'm not saying that's bad or good, but it is a risk that you take. And I set a reminder for myself for this November. If they haven't gotten you anything, cancel the contract, because that's 2 years. So everybody has to make their own thing. They can call me tomorrow and offer me a big placement. I don't think they're trying to rip me off, but I also don't think I'm at the top of their list. So if something comes, it comes. If not, I don't know. But what you should do if you want to look into other opportunities is don't give them all of your music. Say, I'm willing to give you music, but I have an album of 10 songs. I'm going to give you these 4. And if they don't want to work with you and they're like, we only deal in albums, like, why? Why do you only deal in albums? Or we have a minimum of 20 songs per artist. Maybe they do, but weigh those things. You should always remain in control of your stuff. If you're going to give somebody the rights to it, it should be because they're going to do something for you. Ilya, if you self-release an album without a label, you should get on a label later. As an artist and a label owner, I will say only work with people who can do something for you and that it is of mutual benefit. I personally don't prefer to, and this kind of points to Ben's questions, I don't really want to release records that are already out because I assume that it's just a little bit more of an uphill climb for a record that's not out yet. I'm not categorically saying I wouldn't do it. The one exception to that is we encourage artists, because the way my label works is that they have to give us a mastered album. We don't have the money to put up front. So in some ways, like, why would they need us at all? But we do help with promotion and release and aggregation. That's what we do, and publicity. I encourage our artists to do crowdfunding campaigns and to give fans exclusive downloads and streams of their record before they come to us. If they've done that, totally fine. If it's widely released to the public already, I would probably rather not put it out. So that's my answer to that.
Okay, John, I think we're at our time.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Does that...
Do I have a minute to answer the last question, or?
Yes. Sorry, I missed that there was a last question. Oh, fine. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I'll just do that. One of the main benefits working with a label seems to be PR and promotion. If you don't have a label, is there someone, company that you can hire to do publicity for you? Yes, talk to other artists. There are, I'll tell you, in honesty, like we do all the publicity and promotion for our label, our team. Some artists of ours decide to hire a publicist and some don't. And it's great if they do, but we don't require it. But yes, but make sure you really do your homework there, just because the accountability is really, they can't make you promises. So you have to make sure that you're working with good people. So yeah. And Ian said, thank you. Thank you. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you, John. And thanks everyone for coming. I'll follow up with John's PowerPoint resource list and the video if you want to watch again. So nice to see everyone, and good luck in this really challenging time. And thank you so much, John.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. And in the list there, I'm going to put my email here. I can type it right.
I'll CC you on the email, John.
Yes, yes. Feel free to reach out. Yeah, and thank you. Thank you. I'm wishing everybody the best.
Bye.
Thank you.